The following is brought to you by the Social Suplex Podcast Network.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 2 of the 8-Bit Suplex here on the Social Suplex Podcast Network. It's dangerous to go alone. That's why I brought my co-host with me, Sandy Gaviria. Sandy, how are you?
Hi, Josh. I'm good. How are you? And hi, everyone listening.
Can you believe it?
I'm so excited.
We had what I'm going to claim as a record-breaking first episode ever. The numbers are in. We're a big success. I'm going to call it. We're a big success. Lots of friends and family taking the time out to listen. I have friends and family that are not wrestling fans that were listening. My nephew, who is 9, who's never watched any wrestling, found out that I recorded a podcast, and now he won't stop asking me about wrestling. So that's pretty cool. So,
That's so awesome.
yeah. So, I don't know. How's fame changed you this week, Sandy?
It's been it's been amazing. I've gotten some great feedback. There's been friends and people that I've known over the years, like that I haven't talked to in possibly like 10 years, and they're like, "Oh my God, I can't wait to check this out." And then they'll tell me like, "Hey, it was so great to hear you, and hear your input." And like you mentioned, a lot of them were not even wrestling fans or maybe even video game fans, but hey, now they want to check out wrestling, and that is one of my personal goals with this is to get people to enjoy the games that we love, to enjoy the wrestling that we love. Maybe those people that are not familiar with that product, and we want to get just the eyes on all of these things that we love.
Absolutely. And before we get started into Emergence Night 1, I do want to make sure to remind you that support for the 8-Bit Suplex is brought to you by Manscaped, who is the best in men's below-the-belt grooming. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. They obsess over their technology developments to provide you the best tools for your grooming experience. And that's not all, Sandy, is it?
Oh my gosh. So I just found out about this. Yes, I'm a female, but hey, you know what? Christmas is coming. That's what I tell my boyfriend. He might need one of these. So we have a special promotion going on. We actually have a deal where if you can be one of the first 5 people to use code SUPLEX, that's SUPLEX, at checkout on manscaped.com after you create your purchase. You will actually receive the AEW All Out pay-per-view, completely paid for and courtesy of the Social Suplex Network. Like I mentioned, all you have to do is be one of the first 5 people to use the code SUPLEX, and we do have to make sure we provide a confirmation of the purchase. All you have to do is send that over to socialsuplex@gmail.com, and they'll be able to take care of that AEW All Out pay-per-view for you. That's pretty freaking cool. Can I be a part of that, Josh, or am I not eligible?
I think we're exempt for that, Sandy, but unfortunately, and I know, and I had already purchased my Manscaped Lawnmower 3.0 prior to this contest coming to fruition, but that's okay. I'm not bitter. I'm just happy to be able to share this with the fans, of which I'm told there's now millions. So, yep. And like you said, I mean, it's a great deal. The All Out pay-per-view, I think, is like $60. So if you go and you spend, $40, $50 on manscaped.com, you're going to net, because listen, I'm a businessman. There's going to be some net value coming back to you if you shoot over that receipt to socialsuplex@gmail.com. And like you said, hey, makes great gifts. Makes great gifts to all the female friends out there. And listen, if you're someone that doesn't want to use it for their body, it works great on faces. I'm not saying that you should do both at the same time. There might be maybe some cleansing that has to happen. But that's up to you, and no judgment here. No shame.
Let's keep it sanitary, though.
Yeah, I feel like the more we talk about it, the more we're going to get into a part of this that we don't want to talk about. So
moving on.
All right. Here we go. Emergence Night 1. Impact Wrestling, much like the other 2 midweek promotions that we see on television, decided that they were going to do a pay-per-view level card spread out across 2 weeknights on television for free, as long as you're a subscribing cable member. And we've seen pretty good success for both NXT and AEW doing this, both with the Great American Bash, and then I believe it was Fight for the Fallen. They did that as well for AEW. But you know what? We're the Impact Wrestling podcast, so we're going to stick to talking about this one. And Emergence Night 1, I thought was pretty awesome.
I totally concur, Josh. I thought it was a blast. We'll go through the card and kind of talk about the different matches and what we liked or maybe even disliked. But preferably the things that we do like. As we mentioned briefly last episode, we actually want to be a podcast where you get positivity drizzled into your day. You know, you see a lot of different content that can become negative, and you know, sometimes here and there you will hear us criticize something that maybe we didn't like, but we want to keep it as fun as possible and as positive as possible. So even if there's that in there, hey, let's find the positive in that. And I think that's a pretty good thing to do.
Yeah, I think, you know, especially, you know, if the match itself doesn't fire on all cylinders, there's still a lot of work that goes into it. There's still a lot of dedication these people are putting in behind the scenes. So we want to highlight that and say, look, I mean, maybe it wasn't the best match we've ever seen, but there's some still real life bumps and bruises that are happening, and we definitely want to make sure that we call that out. I don't know that Sandy will ever get into star ratings and different things like that, except when you subscribe to our podcast, rate it 5 stars, and leave a quick review telling us how much you love us, because I know that's the only option. But outside of that, you know, we're just going to keep it light and positive. And, you know, with that, we're going to jump right in here to the first match on the card, which was the X Division Championship, where the defending champion Chris Bay put his title on the line against TJP. And as we saw last week, Rohit Raju decided to jump in and convince Chris Bay, hey, I got your back if you make this a triple threat match. And so, man, I thought this was a great match to start with. I thought there was a lot of energy. What did you think about this one overall, Sandy?
I absolutely loved the fun start of the match with TJP just going over the top rope and taking down his two opponents. As Josh was saying on commentary, TJP understood that this was essentially going to be a handicap match, a 2-on-1 with the champion Chris Bay and was it Rohit Raju? Yep. My accent may come out when I say his name, so I apologize in advance. But he understood that, and man, can we talk about TJP and his incredibly innovative offense on both opponents? I was blown away.
Yeah, you know, we kind of, you know, poked fun at TJP for his Twitter account last week, but as much fun as it is to poke fun at his Twitter account, that's how much fun it is to watch the guy wrestle. And you know, he's silky smooth. You know, I don't remember the last time I saw him really, you know, quote unquote botch anything. But especially here, you know, 2 guys attacking him at once. He puts one in a submission. Second guy comes over, and now he's got both in a submission move. And these are, you know, they're, you know, if he goes for a Boston Crab, he's also going to cross the leg and he's going to wrench on it that much more. I felt like, and the commentary did a great job putting this over. It didn't matter what angle you came at TJP, he had an answer for it.
And it was super exciting. TJP, did you remember the double octopus hold?
Yes. I
was just like, I was holding my head like, what? I couldn't remember a time that I'd seen that before. So I was just like, oh, this is just chef's kiss, as they say online, right?
Right, hashtag chef's kiss. You know, what's great too is I think he turned one of those octopus stretches on Chris Bay into kind of a crucifix slam a little bit, and then bridge that into the pin.
Beautiful.
And he had a leg lock in on Chris Bay early in the match, and then he did a bridging suplex to Rohit Raju and got the pin dead too. And it was just, you know, every time you see TJP, he's always doing something that just shows like he's that much more flexible. He's that much more athletic. You know, he's not as flippy as he used to be, but he proves that that's totally okay. And if you like technical wrestling, TJP's your guy. You know?
Yeah, especially this match with 2 different guys. He's over here. He was Zack Sabre Jr., but like, of course, it's in his own TJP kind of way, and with 2 opponents at once. I was blown away.
Yeah, and you know, and he did do some aerial stuff. That was pretty impressive too. He kind of does that springboard to the outside, almost like an over-the-top rope 619, which is a pretty cool move. We're not going to only talk about TJP with this match because he didn't win it. As much as we talk about how great he was in it, he got a lot of offense in, he got a lot of defense in. But ultimately, towards the end of the match, we see Chris Bay up in a tree of woe, and TJP is about to win it, about to do a finishing move, and here comes Rohit Raju, climbs to the turnbuckle. Chris Bay thinks, all right, great, he's going to save me. I'm going to retain this. And then we get a double stomp from the top by Rohit Raju to Chris Bay, and then that's it. 1, 2, 3. Rohit Raju kind of weasels his way into this match and comes away the winner.
I was here for it. I'm slamming my desk. I was excited. So I was not very familiar with Rohit Raju. I think this is my first time seeing one of his matches.
Same here.
I was super impressed. His facial expressions, how vocal he is very animated.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't see him do a lot of offense, like on the same scale as TJP or maybe even Chris Bay, but you could still feel his presence. He wasn't overshadowed by the other two more athletic, more agile opponents. He was there and he made himself seen and heard. And you know how they usually tease when somebody's going to do that sneaky turn? I feel like this came out of nowhere. The entire match, it was like, all right, no, he's still kind of there to help Chris Bay up to the very last second. And so he said, gotcha, swerve, double stomp, pin, new champ, 1, 2, 3. Loved it.
And so many times, I feel like that turn in the triple threat, right? It happens really early in the match, and now it's just a true triple threat. This thing was a handicap match until the last 5 seconds. It was boom, flipped it on its head. Chris Bay took him. He was trying to figure out what happened. TJP didn't understand what happened. TJP has a lot of other stuff going on. He was just on New Japan Strong this week. So we'll see kind of what's kind of going on with him. He's talking about being in a tag team. So he's got other things going on. But for Chris Bay, he got the guy in the match. He made it a triple threat, and then the guy turns on him. You can't pick a better match to kick off what is going to be your 2-night event, I think.
Correct. And I perfectly agree with that statement. It was so much fun. I loved it. I can't wait to watch him wrestle more. Rohit Raju. I'm not going to forget his name. Very excited that he's a champ.
Absolutely. And you know what? X Division always seems to deliver, quite frankly. Next up, we have what I'm going to say right now, and I'm going to speak confidently here. We're a podcast that loves Wrestle House, are we not?
Yes, we are. I love it.
I thought the banter between Larry D and AC Romero, I was literally sitting at my desk with my AirPods in, with my kids running around behind me, and I was just laughing at my computer because the back and forth, the ring rust cologne. It was some really funny stuff. Definitely, if there's YouTube clips of Wrestle House, go watch it.
I need to do that. I need to catch up for the beginning part because I've only seen the clips from last week's episode and this week. So I definitely want to catch up and see how this all even started because it's hilarious. This is a great part of pro wrestling entertainment. This is the entertainment aspect that I feel works. It's entertaining. I'm laughing. I'm enjoying it. I can't wait for the next one.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where we get so wrapped up in, okay, let's get these work rate matches out there. Let's do all this really cool athletic stuff. And believe me, listen, I'm a huge fan of Lucha. I love the stuff that the Young Bucks are doing. But you know what? Let's do a little bit of fun stuff, right? Let's mix it in. Let's incorporate that into our show, and let's do it naturally in a way that doesn't completely take you out of what's going on with the programming, right? You see these cornball backstage segments sometimes with WWE, where it's just kind of like, all right, well, now I'm changing the channel. But with Wrestle House, I feel like it brings you in, and then the concept, and then the people that are in it are performing perfectly. They're a great comedic act.
Exactly, and me personally, I feel like the reason why this works so well is that they're not trying to be something they're not. They know it's entertainment. They know it's silly. They know it's supposed to be silly, and that's how it's going to be. It's not like some of the backstage segments, like you mentioned, in WWE, where it sounds so corny and silly, but they're trying to be so serious. Like, okay, well, no, you lost me because I thought it was supposed to be silly, but you're taking it so seriously. I'm not taking it seriously if I think it's corny. But this works. I know it's silly. I know it's supposed to make you laugh. It's supposed to give these guys an opportunity to show who they are and their character, and I think it's done very well.
Yep, absolutely. And then next up, we had a little backstage vignette from the Good Brothers, Carl Anderson and Doc Gallows. I thought it was a nice little preview for their match. Showed a lot of intensity, kind of getting ready for the night. And we got to see that match later on, and it kind of, I kind of wished it was the next one up. But it was not the next one up, was it?
It was not.
So we had the self-proclaimed TNA World Heavyweight Champion Moose in action versus Trey Miguel of the Rascals. And if you remember from last week, Trey Miguel had Suicide's mask on, and Moose thought he was Suicide. And as we know with the World Heavyweight Championship, they are invitation only chances. And Moose was obviously very, very angry at Trey Miguel that he took that, which was intended for Suicide. Let's what did you think of this match here?
Moose looked absolutely terrifying. He looked like he wanted to murder Trey when he came out. And then I also add, he looked like a freaking superstar with that robe. His whole little, he looked great.
Yeah.
He looked fantastic. But I was like, oh no, Trey Miguel is about to just die. But I really love what Rain was saying during commentary at the beginning of the match. She said that, hey, Trey Miguel, he may have the heart of a champion, the heart of gold, but tonight he just may not become a champion, especially not against Moose. And I was like, oh, girl, you're right. But then I thought, okay, we have the dynamic of big man, little man, the underdog versus this monstrosity. We see that so often, and sometimes it can be done so well, and sometimes it's just like, oh, whatever, squash, we knew that was going to happen.
Right.
I personally thought this was an absolute great showcase match for Trey Miguel, especially for someone like me who's not familiar with his work. The kid looked fantastic. Even though he came up short, he didn't win the championship. He was able to go out there, his defense, his oh my God, he had such an intense energy about him where he knew he was about to get his ass kicked, but he was going over there and just giving it his all. I absolutely enjoyed Trey Miguel very much, and I hope to see more of him as well.
Yeah, I thought they did a really good job setting up the scene where we obviously knew there was a size discrepancy. And then early on, Trey Miguel tries to hit Moose with chops, and it does nothing.
Nothing.
And then Moose hits him with one chop, and he hits the mat. I mean, Moose is terrifying. You hit it on the head. The guy looks like $1 million. And what's crazy, too, is there was one spot where Trey Miguel got up to the top rope to get ready to jump, and Moose drop kicked him off. And it was in his head. Like, he got elevated.
Rock.
And it was, Moose's drop kicks are all just, hashtag chef's kiss.
Yes.
Right? And towards the end, when it started to feel like, okay, Trey Miguel had this kind of comeback. It was a really nice comeback. Like you said, he got some offense in. He was doing some great moves. And then Moose just flipped that switch and then hit him with the spear, and that was it, which he calls the lights out because he kind of twists at the end there. It's a little different. And then we get a little bit of post-match surprise from none other than EC3, who decided he was just going to take the belt.
I thought this segment here could have been better had there been an audience in the crowd. Mm-hmm. It feels so awkward, him just coming in here, just complete silence, attacking Moose. Was thinking about leaving, then he came back for the title and then took it. He stole it. But that moment would have been a lot better with the crowd.
Yeah, I agree with that. And what's interesting too is we have some, unfortunately we live in this internet world where we kind of heard that EC3 is also going to be doing some ROH tapings. So we'll see kind of where he winds up full time. I imagine it'll be with Impact full time, and he's just getting some extra matches in on ROH. But we'll see what happens here. But he came in and he flattened Moose pretty quickly here. So they're definitely setting that up. I imagine it won't be next week. I imagine that we'll be looking at Bound for Glory, which is the next pay-per-view. But But I'm excited to see those two guys because they are a couple of big guys.
It's going to be fun. I can't wait to see.
After that, we see an interesting Eric Young video talking about all the things he's been in Impact. Talking about how he was the super athletic protege type, he was this type, he was that type, and really setting up this crazy Eric Young that we have today. I thought it was a nice little video package, and then we get right into the flashback moment of the week, which was him beating Kurt Angle in a stretcher match.
I want to go back and watch this match. I was watching this clip and I was like, what the heck is going on here? But no, I had a lot of fun just watching that small clip.
Right. When was the last time you saw someone giving someone 2 pile drivers to finish them off?
Oh my gosh, seriously. That looks so brutal.
And every time I see Kurt Angle get dropped on his head, I die a little bit.
Yes, so much cringe. I'm like, oh no, your neck, my man.
And then
what year was that? Do you remember?
I believe that was 2015. I'll have to go back and look, but I know there was a 5 in there. I think it was 2015. I don't think it was 05. Maybe it was. Maybe it was 1995, and we're all just dreaming.
Oh no.
I don't think it was 95. But it was vicious. Then next up, and I'll point this out too. I like that there's no like true form to how Impact runs their shows. It's not match promo, match vignette, match this. You can get a couple of these things setting up this next stuff. Willie Mack is getting interviewed backstage. Brian Myers decides he's going to talk. Takes the cameraman, takes the reporter, and cuts what I thought was actually a really good Brian Myers promo.
I was so hyped. I was like, oh yes, tell him. He flat out called out Vince McMahon and the E, which was super entertaining. I was like, oh, shots fired. But he pretty much just told, hey, I'm here on Impact now, and you guys better get your shit straight. Better watch your stuff because he's had it. He's fed up, and I don't blame him. That's a great storyline there for him.
I think the line he said, I'm sick of just being somebody's hand, because we hear that so many times. If you listen to the Conradiverse of podcasts, all of his hosts have this guy or that guy was a great hand. Well, why didn't you push him in? Well, he was a great hand, and Brian Myers was fed up. I mean, and I can imagine being there as long as he was and not getting a real serious shot at anything, and then to just kind of WrestleMania's in New York. You and Matt Cardona are both from New York. We'll give you the tag titles, and then we're going to take them off of you, and then that was it. Right? That guy was. I don't know exactly how long Brian Myers was there, but it was a few years. And to really get nothing meaningful aside from that and losing 200 matches in a row, that's got to be frustrating. So I like what he's doing. I like the edge he has to him. And speaking of people with an edge to them right now, Willie Mack comes over and decides that he's going to fight him because he took away his interview time.
And we are left with a very unfortunate camera angle here.
Yes.
I don't know if you noticed. Cut it.
There was a lot of Willie's backside in the camera view, but it does set up, which I think will be a chance to steal the show next week at Emergence Night 2, which we'll get into a little bit more later. But they did announce a match between Brian Myers and Willie Mack, and I'm excited about it. But we'll talk more about that later. The aforementioned Good Brothers come on out for their match against Ace Austin and Madman Fulton. And before we get into it, I don't know if you noticed this, but they said they booked the Good Brothers from Tokyo, Japan, which I thought was interesting. A little bit nod back to the fact that they tagged in Japan together, maybe a nod to where they might be headed next. But I know they are signed with Impact, but I know there's sometimes deals that they can cut where, okay, in the United States, we're only going to wrestle with Impact, but we'll also go wrestle New Japan. So I don't know if that's a little, nudge, nudge, wink, wink there. I caught that. But, I thought this was a pretty great match between, four really, we haven't seen Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows wrestle like this in a long time, I don't think. And They move pretty good. Ace Austin is, I mean, the the name is there for him, right? I mean, he's going to be the ace of Impact for sure. The guy moves well. He's charismatic. The purple hair does it all for me, right? I mean, he's
Mhm.
just every move he did was slick. I loved that he basically gave Carl Anderson the paper cut of doom with the playing card with his ace.
Oh, it was a playing card? Oh, that's good.
Yeah,
Okay, so
yeah.
I for some reason I was watching this, maybe when I was typing my notes or anything, I could have swore he took out a blade, and I was like, oh no. So I thought he had a blade in his like
No,
wristlet.
no, it's the
But
ace up
okay,
his
so it's a
sleeve.
card.
Yep. Hmm.
Oh, okay, God, that makes me feel a lot better. I was like, oh no, this took a turn.
Yeah, no, it kind of plays into that whole kind of Gambit from X-Men look that he has.
Mhm.
And also, the fact that he is the ace, Ace Austin, he's got the ace up his sleeve. And Carl Anderson sold it like it was the most painful thing in the world. And that's because paper cuts, Sandy, are the most painful things in the world. I don't know the last time
I
I've got
can
one,
agree.
but I hope to God I never get another one.
They're the worst. I just always think back of Jackass. I don't know if you ever watched Jackass growing up.
Yeah.
Was it Steve-O with the? Oh God, I'll never forget that for the rest of my life.
For the viewers, for the viewers, oh my God, this is not a visual thing. For the listeners at home, we are not going to discuss further what Steve-O did, probably ever on this podcast. In case you've forgotten, we don't want to jar any memories. But yes, I grew up in the '90s, so Jackass was definitely the show that I turned on after my parents fell asleep.
Yes.
Because much like professional wrestling, I was certainly not allowed to watch Jackass.
My mom never found out. It was okay.
Yeah, I don't know how much my mom knew what I watched or didn't watch, or I imagine she cared quite a bit. The Simpsons wasn't allowed in my house either, so I mean, I know it was because Bart was
Oh,
disrespectful to his parents, and my parents
oh.
didn't want us to tell them to eat their shorts. Which, as a parent now, I can understand not wanting your child to tell you to eat their shorts. But hey, listen, don't give me a reason to tell you that. That's my take.
There you
So, but good match, and it ended the way I think we all expected to, with the Magic Killer. Um, 1, 2, 3, pretty clean cut. Um, I'm interested to see where they go with the Good Brothers, if they enter them into a tag team championship situation, or if they're just gonna hang around and just beat up on other guys. It'd be interesting to see. I don't know. I kind of like the tag team situation they got going on. I don't think they need to enter those guys in the championship, but that's
go.
my opinion. What do you think, Sandy?
I absolutely agree. And you know what? To me, although every card in the show, every match in the card, it's late.
Yeah, we gotta
It's
stop recording
delivered
so late.
right. Even individual, every match delivered to me. This was actually my weakest one.
Hmm.
In my personal opinion, it's the weakest one for me. I mean, everything did look great. I'm not familiar with Ace Austin, so I did get to see him perform, and he looked great. Fulton, I don't remember Fulton being this big compared to when he was in NXT. My God, he's massive.
He's huge, yeah.
Um, yeah, the big man exchange with Luke Gallows and Fulton was really fun. It really worked because they're so evenly matched as far as size, how big they are, and how tall they are. So I think it was a great exchange. The match, to me, there was a lot of back and forth. So they both both teams looked equally strong.
Hmm.
Um, there were a couple of things that I was watching. I was like, wait, why did he do that, or why didn't he do that? But that's just me being nitpicky. Overall, I thought it was a great match. Like I said, it was the weakest one for me. I didn't like the ending. Didn't look so good to me. When Luke Gallows actually they were on the outside, and he gives him a big boot to Fulton to make sure that he doesn't go in to
Right,
disrupt the pin from Carl Anderson. That looked a little clunky to me. I wish it would have been a stronger impact, no pun intended, to
right.
make it seem like, okay, they definitely needed to take that big guy out. It was just kind of like, oh, here you go. You're away now. Let's get the pin.
Yeah, and I almost think too, like a better move in that situation is to skip the whole foot in the fence thing, because I don't believe for a second Madman Fulton's foot could get stuck in that fence.
Mm-hmm.
And then to get the big boot, I say you throw the guy into the barricade, and then you do the old clothesline over the top. And that's how you get them out of it. That would have been much cleaner, I think, and then it doesn't look as clunky, and you don't have to do this whole foot stuck in the rail thing. But you're right, that's kind
Agreed.
of being nitpicky, and it was still fun. I agree with you. It was probably the lowest one on the card for me, but
Hmm.
it's not like because it was bad. I just think everything else was really good.
Ah, that's a great positive way to look at it.
Right,
Oh, I do want
exactly.
to make a shout out to Ace Austin. His knees, he does different knee variations.
Yes.
Very cool. I'm kind of jealous. I wish I had some strong looking knees like that. I love that knee offense.
Well,
It
you
looks
just got to
fun.
get some knee pads, Sandy, that make your knees look buff.
Not just buff like that. I mean the maneuvers. I want to kick everyone in the face with knees.
Well, I'm sure Logan will let you practice.
Oh, he better.
Right? Okay, so next up we have our second, and we only had two segments of Wrestle House this week. But of course, this was the match that they teased last week for night one of Emergence from Wrestle House. And that was Taya Valkyrie versus Kylie Ray, who is our number one contender for the Knockouts division. I thought it was pretty funny here in the lead up to it. They started doing this whole thing about missing beer. And then Rosemary and Larry D, who now calls himself Lawrence D, because he's so smitten with her, trying to win her over. Had a good back and forth about like teasing out like, oh, how about we do something next week together? So not teasing a match for next week, but furthering that romance, that love triangle, that Johnny Bravo, Rosemary thing, and I thought that was a good little kind of thing. And then we see Rosemary's the ref. Now, before we get into the match, I have a bone to pick here because Tommy Dreamer, who once sent me a message on Twitter, did not show up at all in Russell House this week. Sadie, what up with that?
Sad face, tear face. I love that that's your gimmick. Tommy Dreamer messaged me on Twitter once.
Sandy,
That's your
we're
gimmick.
not supposed to talk about what my gimmick is, okay? That's for the listeners to figure that out. But you know what? I know where he was. He was writing me another message. I'm gonna assume
There
that's
you
what it
go.
is.
He's responding again.
I haven't gotten it yet, but I will. So
Keep us posted, I guess.
you know what? So we got a good match here, I think, from Taya and Kylie Ray. I want to see this match again away from Russell House, but it was, compared to the Russell House matches that we got last week, obviously this one was much longer. It was better in my opinion. They kind of sold the fact that Rosemary and Taya are friends, so Rosemary kind of teaches the ref a little bit. But hey, listen, she's got to go back into the house with everybody, so she
Mm-hmm.
does begrudgingly count for Kylie Ray when she's pinning. Um, I both of these women can wrestle. They're both really good. Taya makes reference to the fact that she used to work in Mexico and slaps away, Kylie Ray's hand for the handshake. Overall, I just thought it was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun for me as well. The match ultimately fulfilled its purpose. Being in Wrestle House is to progress that storyline,
Hmm.
to progress the fact that hey, Kylie Ray is the number one contender, and she's going to now beat Taya, who's one of the greatest knockouts in Impact history, who has wrestled over the world, who is now the leader or host. I don't know what her role really is. Well, I know her role, but what
Right.
her title is in Wrestle House.
I think she's
The
kind of like
house is
the self-appointed house mother or something.
very.
Something very facts of life kind of. I'm setting the rules kind of thing. But yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. I mean, like, you're right. It's not going to be some classic that Dave Meltzer's going to write a think piece about, right? It's Russell House. It's progressing the story of Russell House, and it leaves us on a cliffhanger, uh, which is who took the beer.
Oh, that's right.
I mean, my theory is the reason we didn't see Tommy Dreamer this week, aside from him messaging me again, is that
Mm.
Tommy Dreamer's probably the guy that took the beer because I think everyone else was in the episode except Tommy Dreamer. So I'm gonna make a prediction here, and I'll probably be wrong next week. But for this week, I'm gonna say Tommy Dreamer took the beer.
So we'll see. Giant cliffhanger. Next episode, they're going to show him at his computer writing to you, Josh, while drinking some beers.
I think so. I mean, you can't tell me that's not what's gonna happen. because we don't know. I mean, I suppose there may be some people that know already because they already taped night 2, but hey, who knows? Who knows?
Who knows?
So,
keep your fingers crossed.
Sandy, why don't you take us through this main event here?
Main event. Oh, we have the North. I'm so sorry. I had to look at my notes. We have the North, All Ego, Ethan Page, and Josh Alexander versus the Motor City Machine Guns. This match, I mean, everything, for me, it was everything and more. It was the rematch to what happened at Slammiversary. Man, I was just watching this match, and I didn't even take notes because I was just so completely involved in the action and the storytelling, everything that was going on here. Overall, man, I am in love with Ethan Page. He looks like a mega superstar.
Absolutely.
This match was fun. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I the same as you. Like I try to pick certain things here, certain things there that I can write down to talk about. And there was one spot that was really cool that I'll get to. But the pacing with both teams, they were just on fire. I mean, the pace when you have the previous tag match, kind of at slower pace. Gallows and Anderson aren't moving at a clip like they used to. They're both getting up there. Madman Fulton is never going to be that fast because he's the big guy. But now you have a situation here where all 4 of these guys can motor, and no pun intended with the Motor City Machine Guns. There was the one spot kind of towards the end where Alex Shelley gets up on the ropes, looks like he's about to do a springboard, and then just opens his legs up, and Saban just goes diving through him. And I don't know about you, Sandy, but I don't trust anybody to dive through my legs in between ropes.
No, not even underwater.
Right. I'm just like, I saw that happen. I'm like, and it was clean. He didn't clip the rope. He didn't do anything. And obviously, from a rope separation, Shelley standing on the ropes kind of helps open that gap up. But he didn't spread his legs very far. And like as soon as I saw that's what they were doing, I kind of like sat back in my chair and picked my knees up a little bit, like, oh God, like what's going on? Like, and he's gonna need to head, take his manscaper down there afterwards. But he listen, no harm, no foul, right? So really, 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 really fun match. They set up that Ethan Page, that All Ego kind of gets in the way with the pin. They have him dead to rights. They do the tag team move, and then instead of hooking the leg, he tries to pose, and I believe it was Chris Sabin kicks out of 2, and then from that point on, we get a nice little combination haluva kick and enziguri in the corner, and then Sabin holds I believe it was Page for the crossbody from Shelley to have the Motor City Machine Guns retain.
Holy crap. I was going to say this. So we're not going to be ones that are going to dissect the match move by move by move. And right. I feel like that's pretty much impossible for a match of this caliber. Mm-hmm. Both teams were just on the offense, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and doing these amazing maneuvers that just make you want to, like, I don't know. To me, I was just like, oh, this is why I love professional wrestling. The Motor City Machine Guns are just they're a team that everyone can love, and it's so easy to love them just because they're so great in the ring. I did want to make one what do I call it? One observation, I'm drawing out right now. I'm so sorry.
No, you're okay.
Josh Alexander. His selling of his knee that's been being worked on by the Motor City Machine Guns, a very small detail that makes a huge difference in the entire story of the match. Mm-hmm. Not only was he selling while he was being attacked by the Motor City Machine Guns, even after he was able to kind of turn the match around with Ethan Page and put the offense on them, he still registered his knee because his knee was being worked on for quite some time. That's what they were isolating his knee, isolating Josh Alexander to kind of get one over on the North. Just that small detail, though. I kept seeing Josh Alexander limp a little bit. Whenever he would use that knee, he would kind of go back and touch it and feel it and then make up the face like, hey, this is hurting. That, to me, it's just really small details in wrestling that make me appreciate it that much more. And so I wanted to give a huge shout out to Josh Alexander, another wrestler from Impact that I'm not too familiar with his work, but definitely excited to see more of.
Yeah, listen, anybody that wrestles in headgear is okay with me. So,
Yeah.
and also, hey, he's got a great first name. Unfortunately for him, if he ever decided to join the Social Suplex Podcast Network, he would be Josh number 3 behind Josh Smith, co-host of the Ace of Podcasts, of course, keeping it strong style, and myself, the self-proclaimed Josh number 2. At some point, there might be a death match between me and Josh number 1 to decide who will be the new Josh number 1. But hey, listen.
Dun, dun, dun.
Coronavirus is still going on, so no matches between the two of us are going to happen for some time. But I thought as we put a bow on this night 1, real exciting stuff. We had some great backstage segments, including one that I did mention earlier, which was another Heath Slater commercial, or just Heath as he calls himself. I'm excited for night number 2. It seems like we don't have the full card yet announced. They have, and we'll run down that here quickly in a moment, but overall, I thought this was a really good show. They're building off of what they've been setting up for this night. And then, we're going to start seeing them kind of transition towards, we have Emergence Night 2 kind of set. They've already taped it. And now, after next week, we're going to start building towards Bound for Glory. They're doing a good job, I think, week to week, telling stories and making sure that if you're an Impact Wrestling fan, you're going to want to keep coming back, because, listen, there's a lot of options. And,
Absolutely.
I don't know about you, but I'm happy that, we're a part of this podcast to actually, have us put our eye, because you and I are not traditionally Impact fans.
Correct.
But you know what? Listen, even if this podcast ended tomorrow, I'd still tune into Impact every week because I'm loving it.
They have us hooked. But Josh, I completely agree with what you were saying. Overall, I thought this was a very easy to follow, easy to watch show. Even us as new fans, we're kind of able to pick and follow along the storylines. And one of the big things that's missing in my professional wrestling, in WWE specifically, is the lack to be able to follow through with storylines. I like what they're doing now, new things. Hopefully it plays out in the future. But you have to be able to allow those storylines to progress over time, over weeks, over months, maybe over years. Those are always the best storytelling, the best matches that you'll see. So that's something that I would definitely give props to Impact for doing. The wrestling itself, to me, was superb, with every match delivering from top to bottom. As we discussed last week, the commentary team of Josh and Madison Rain, I believe, really works. They have a really strong back and forth, and Madison's input from her wrestling experience does not go unnoticed. I do also want to do a little shout out and mention that there are certain individuals that really come off as superstars to me. And like I mentioned earlier, those include Trey Miguel, Rohit, I can't say his name. See, I gotta get better on that. And Rohit Raju and All Ego Ethan Page. One of my nitpick things is that the show really does lack that extra energy that the audience members do bring when observing from the ringside. There were several moments that I felt would have had a larger impact, no pun intended, if the audience was there to follow along and intensify the emotional output. But overall, I thought that it was a great show. I was very entertained. I was left wanting more, so I'm very excited, and I cannot wait for Emergence Night 2.
Yeah, and just to follow up on something you said just there, would you think that Impact would be better served doing a fan style like how AEW's had it, where fans are ringside, they're interactive, they're clapping, there's no hockey boards in front of them? Or do you like kind of the presentation that WWE's putting out, where people are slapping on the hockey boards and they're not necessarily clapping at the same right times and things? Which would you think that Impact would benefit more from?
I think they would benefit more from the AEW style, though I do like what WWE is doing with the plastic, the hockey thing. I'm a big fan of hockey, so when I sit front row, I'm slamming that thing, and it's exciting and kind of brings that energy up. But I know what they're trying to keep everyone safe with the whole COVID-19 situation. Whichever way, I feel like they would just benefit from just having people in the audience to be able to show that emotion and bring that energy up a little bit.
Yeah, you're probably not wrong. It'll be interesting to see, too, once all these promotions are All Elite Wrestling came out and said that they're going to start selling, I think it was like 20% capacity tickets for Dynamite.
Oh, that's right.
And you know that if AEW is going to be selling tickets, WWE is definitely going to be selling tickets, especially since WWE is moving over to the Amway Center, which is a bigger arena. However, it is indoor versus Daly's Place being outdoor. It'll be interesting to see what Impact's response to that is. If they continue to say we might not get, the fans in Nashville might not turn out for us the way that we would want to. Is it worth doing? Or do we just kind of keep it going until we can start moving the show around again? It'd be interesting to kind of keep an eye on.
Absolutely.
So night 2, there is 2 confirmed matchups. So we'll start with those. We mentioned one of them before. We have Willie Mack, who is dealing with all kinds of the emotion about Rich Swann, being pissed off about Eric Young, and then now he's kind of turned. Brian Myers decided to step in front of him and take on that anger and have it directed at him. Probably not a smart move by Brian Myers, but I think we're going to see Willie Mack kind of get back on the road to victory here. But his emotions might get the better of him like they did when he wrestled against Eric Young. So it'll be an interesting match, but I'm going to think Willie Mack takes this one. What do you think?
My money's on Brian Myers.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, let's see. Listen, he was sick of losing. Let's see if he turns it around.
Like, how would they disrespect this man if he comes from the mess that he came from to come back and lose? No. He has to. Hopefully this can be a long-term feud between Brian Myers and Willie Mack. Maybe it'll end in a no DQ. I know sometimes those are kind of like, oh, why? But if it's in the beginning of a feud, I think it's okay. Maybe they'll just freaking go insane and beat the hell out of each other to where they're disqualified. Who knows?
I think the interesting thing about no DQs in Impact versus like a WWE is that WWE no DQs don't feel like a no DQ match. It just feels like a match that doesn't have countouts, right? And there's an occasional, maybe a kendo stick. There's maybe a chair being smacked once. But Impact Wrestling, in their history, and even at Slammiversary, there will be trash cans. There will be parking signs. There will be salad tongs, as we saw with Kira Hogan and Tasha Steelz last week. And then also, they will use thumbtacks, which I absolutely hate. But it does sell the match, and it does sell the pain aspect of what a no DQ match really should convey, in my opinion. If you get a little bit of blood, it's understandable because there's no disqualifications. But we'll see how that unfolds. And you're right. I mean, I don't think they'd put a one-off on this card, being that it's supposed to be their kind of pay-per-view level card. But we'll see what happens. The other match that we know for sure who the 2 opponents are is the first ever 30-minute Knockouts Iron Man match for the Knockouts Championship, with the champion, Deonna Purrazzo, defending against her challenger, Jordynne Grace, who is using her rematch clause after losing the belt to Deonna Purrazzo. Listen, 30 minutes is a long time for anybody to wrestle. I'm excited to see how hard these girls go for that full 30 minutes. I think Deonna's going to retain. We got Kylie Rae waiting to be that number 1 contender. I think Kylie Rae versus Deonna Purrazzo would be a huge, awesome match, and that's what I'm kind of hoping for. But if Jordynne Grace wins, I won't be upset. But I'm going to think that Purrazzo goes with the Fujiwara armbar and gets Jordynne to tap out again.
Completely agree, and this is my main attraction for Emergence Night 2. I cannot wait to see these 2 go. I'm super excited for Deonna Purrazzo to be back in the ring doing what she loves and what she does best. Jordynne Grace, who doesn't love her? She's a beast. I want to look and be exactly like her. Such a powerhouse. This is gonna be amazing.
Yeah, I'm really excited for it too. Of the 2 confirmed matches, definitely over the top excitement for me. I'm excited to see what Eddie Edwards does in his open challenge. They keep teasing Eric Young. I don't think it's going to be Eric Young here because we have Bound for Glory coming up. It'll be interesting to see who they kind of run out there for that open challenge. I imagine it could be someone like Heath, who's, we saw his Heath for Impact commercial again this week. He's still trying to make his way onto that roster. Oh, I got to help my buddy Rhino out, but Rhino's getting jumped backstage. I can see Heath being thrown in there. I don't know who else they go with, because they've been really pushing for that to be Eric Young. But I think with the pay-per-view upcoming, I just don't see it. I don't see them throwing Eric Young in this match yet. And because I think Eric Young's probably going to win it at Bound for Glory, looking ahead. But I don't know. Who you think? You think we get Eric Young here? Or you think someone else?
I have absolutely no idea. No clue. I'm still trying to catch up and figure out the storylines where everyone stands. If it's Eric Young, it'll be in a fantastic match. If it's not Eric Young, I'm excited to see who they pick. I think they're like anyone who goes against Eddie Edwards, especially after what we've seen the last episode and what we know of him, it's going to be a fantastic match.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the roster now. I don't know who else they throw out there, really. No one really makes sense in that spot, because we already have Brian Myers and Willie Mack both being taken up there. It could be someone that we don't know. It could be someone outside of Impact. It is an open challenge. But either way, as you mentioned, it's going to be Eddie Edwards. It's going to be Eddie Edwards at his best, and that's going to be a fun match. The other thing we have teased, and it's not a match, it's why did EC3 steal the TNA World Heavyweight Championship? I don't know, because he wants it back. He used to hold that title. Maybe he wants it back. I don't know. But it definitely feels like we're cruising for him and Moose at Bound for Glory. I don't expect them to have a match here. Maybe just a brawl to kind of set up the next couple weeks of TV here. I don't know. Why do you think that EC3 stole the TNA World Heavyweight Championship, Sandy?
Why Ethan Carter the third? Why? I don't know. I can't wait to find out, though. His promos, his videos that he's put out immediately after being released from the E. Holy cow, those were so impressive. I've gone back and watched him a few times. He's looking his best. He's feeling his best. He's ready to do it all, I feel, and hopefully. I'm not sure what to expect from him at Emergence 2. Maybe it could just be a video package. Like you mentioned, it could just be a brawl. Either way, I'm excited. I'm a fan of EC3. Love that guy. Can't wait to see what he accomplishes here at Impact again.
Yeah, I mean, he looks like $1 million. He clearly, after being, put on the back burner by the E and got completely shredded. I mean, we see that with a lot of these guys, right? Whether they're coming back from injury, like a Tommaso Ciampa, or just, hey, I got fired and now I got nothing to do but work out. That kind of fit. EC3 also growing the goatee, cutting his hair. He kind of looks John Bernthal-ish. If you're a fan of either The Walking Dead or The Punisher, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I mean, he looks like he's just gonna wipe the floor with anybody that gets in front of him. And that includes Moose, as we saw. He's capable of doing it. So, yeah, Emergence Night 2 is next week, August 25th, airing at 8 o'clock Eastern Time on Access TV, if you have a subscription to cable. I did not think I had access to Access TV, Sandy, and then I found out that the local cable guy that I get my internet from, I went and talked to him about getting my internet upgraded. And I guess he snuck in the ability to live stream their TV app. I don't get their channels on a cable box or anything, but I can use their app. Access TV is one of the channels, but I'm not home during the time that it's on. So, we'll still have to watch it. I'll still have to watch it through the streaming services on Impact Plus. But, it's not like being on USA TV or TNT. Access is a little bit harder to find. But I think if you go out there, there are ways, and they are 100% always legal ways, because we here at the EP2 Suplex would never advocate any sort of piracy or doing anything that is not above the standard of the law.
Because that's illegal.
That's right. Nothing illegal here. With that wraps up our Impact Wrestling for the week here. Tune in next week, of course, to hear our review of Emergence 92. And after the break, we'll come back and we're going to talk about The Legend of Zelda. The good, the bad, the ugly.
This is Jordan Grace, and you're listening to the Social Suplex Podcast Network.
Okay, we're back here from our nice little message from Jordan Grace here, Sandy. And, before we move on talking about video games, I got to say, I got to give a little bit of a testimonial here about how great the Manscaped Lawnmower 3.0 is. You can use it in the shower. You can use it outside the shower, whatever's most convenient for you. It has, you can use the bathroom light, or you can use the LED light that is included on the Lawnmower 3.0. They have lots of great other products that I use, including the Crop Preserver, which is a great thing to keep things fresh down there. And, it's the biggest thing is there's no nicks, there's no cuts. You can shave with confidence because manscaping accidents are now a thing of the past. And, of course, as you know, and we're going to talk about this again, if you go to manscaped.com and use the promo code SUPLEX, you get 20% off, plus free shipping, plus the AEW All-Out pay-per-view if you're one of the first 5 people to do so, and send proof of purchase to socialsuplex@gmail.com. And you know what? Get the Lawnmower 3.0, trim that junk of yours, and afterwards, your balls will thank you. Well, depending on who's using the razor, of course. I think it's a bold assumption by us, but hey, I don't know.
Right? We're not here to judge.
The product is Manscaped, so I think that's why we kind of make that, make that judgment call there. But hey, you know what? We're going to move on. We're going to talk about one of my favorite video game series. I know it's one of your favorite video game series. In fact, it's included in your Twitter handle. And, there are very few franchises that even if you don't know video games, you know that franchise. Obviously, Super Mario Brothers. A more modern day example is probably something like Halo or Call of Duty. But another one is if you see 3 yellow triangles formed into a bigger triangle, that means that it's about The Legend of Zelda. And The Legend of Zelda, of course, was created by Shigeru Miyamoto, who has really given us all the great video games of our childhood that are the Nintendo published ones. Sandy, what was the first time that you remember playing The Legend of Zelda, and what stuck with you?
All right. First of all, Josh and our faithful listeners at home, full disclaimer, I may cry while talking about Zelda just because it has such a special place in my heart. And I'm sure everyone who is a fan of The Legend of Zelda can tell you that. Don't really know. Well, actually, there's many, many things, but there's a reason why it captivates the hearts of so many people. And it could be the music, the symphony. I've seen the symphony live multiple times,
wow.
And I've cried every single time. Maybe it's the music, maybe it's the storytelling, maybe it's the characters, the gameplay. I don't know, maybe it's all of them. But this Legend of Zelda just completely touched me on a whole different level. And like you asked, Josh, my very first experience playing was actually, let's see here. I was very young. I was still living in Colombia. I had no idea of the United States. I did not know English. I think I must have been like 5 or 6 years old, maybe even younger. But I remember my great aunt, she's my grandmother's sister. She loved playing video games with me. So we would have Super Nintendo, the NES system, and my mom was living in the United States, and she would send us games to play, and she would stay up until like 4 a.m. playing video games with me. And I was just, for most of them, I would just watch her because it's like, okay, if we think back, I think Ocarina of Time was the first one I played with her on the Nintendo 64.
Sure.
The game was in English, and that game itself, if you speak English, that game itself was hard. Let's not get started in the water temple. But this woman played it without knowing any English, and being older in age, she was like my grandmother's age. she figured it out. And I would just remember sitting there playing with her and also just watching her and literally just like covering myself up with the pillow as she defeated all these temples. And man, I'll never forget that. I think Ocarina of Time was my very first one. What about you, Josh?
Yeah, so my first experience, and I'll say this, I'm born and raised here in the United States, and I still struggle with the English language. So, you know, um, I grew up playing the Nintendo Entertainment System. My family had one. By the time I'm playing video games, probably, right shortly after that, we picked up the Super Nintendo. But my first one was actually the Legend of Zelda, the original game that came out back in '86. And now, obviously, I didn't play it in '86 because I wasn't born then. I am a child born in the '90s, specifically 1990. If you can figure out the math, you know how old I am. But it was something that, as a kid, as I'm playing this, probably like 94, 95, like 4 or 5 years old, I'm playing this game, and it's captivating. You have a top-down view. You have to figure out everything yourself. There's no hints. There's no nothing, right? Like very little. And you got all these things, these like octopus-looking things shooting rocks at you. You got spiders jumping all over the place. You got skeletons everywhere. And it was the first time, like, I can't even remember like playing a game and not knowing what was going to happen next. And so that sense of exploration with an 8-bit graphic really is something that hooks you in, and it makes you not want to stop until you've beat it, right? Which I did not do until much later in life with the first Legend of Zelda. Similarly, I did play the first one I actually physically beat was the Ocarina of Time. It was one that I got completely lost in. And so, that's kind of a good transition to kind of get into the main meat and potatoes of what we were going to talk about. And so my good game on for the Legend of Zelda, not the good game, because believe me, the majority of them are. But for my selection for the good section of our talk is the Ocarina of Time. And has there been better Zelda games? Probably. You could make that argument. Has there been games that looked better? Certainly. Has there been games that, have better controls because they're not using the Nintendo 64 controller? Because now we have two control sticks, so the cameras work a little bit better. Sure, but we don't have video games as we know it today if it wasn't for the Ocarina of Time and what Nintendo was able to accomplish with that really first open world game that you could hop on your horse and ride across the entire map, right? That had never been done before. And it was for someone like I was 6, maybe 7. Well, I was a little bit older, I guess. I was closer to 8 when I played it. It came out. It was released on North America on November 23rd, 1998. So I would have been 8 years old. So I remember sitting there and just being completely engrossed in it and completely annoyed because my brother was the one that purchased it, which meant that he got dibs. And so he actually wound up going to a weekend-long church camp, and I actually played through the whole thing while he was gone, and he was very pissed that I beat it before him. And that was a fight that lasted a few years. But needless to say, because I would then sit over his shoulder and be like, no, that's wrong, you idiot. You got to do this. Because, being the little brother I am. But yeah, I mean, just you get so you want to talk about getting lost in everything. And of course, with the ocarina and the music, and the composition that Koji Kondo puts into the Ocarina of Time, just like he does with all the games that he works on. It's a really beautiful game. It's a simple story with a little bit of a time travel twist. I'm going to assume most people have played that game, but if you haven't, certainly do so. It is, it's the better Nintendo 64 Zelda game. And I might be bringing that one up again later. But Ocarina. So for the good section here, I'm going Ocarina of Time for the Nintendo 64. What do you got, Sandy? What's your good?
First of all, how dare you? I know where this is going.
I feel like we're
By
starting to
the way,
sense a theme here where every week Sandy wants to hit me for something, and I'm going to
oh yeah,
continue to say we need to record over Skype even after the pandemic ends because I don't know what's going to happen.
I will be knocking at your door like, hey, let me in. But how dare you? No, but for our listeners, we decided to not tell each other what our picks were for the
That's a
good, the
good
bad, and
point.
the
Yeah.
ugly in the Legend of Zelda. So it's a complete surprise to me. I not to say that I read you like a book, Josh, but I not surprised that you pick Ocarina of Time. I'm just kidding. But that
Ouch.
is a big one. That is a big one for a lot
Yeah.
of people. That's really the one that kind of put the Legend of Zelda into the hands, into the hearts of a majority of the audience, I believe. And I feel it was because of Ocarina of Time. I was one of them. It was because of that game that I went back and like, okay, what else is in this
Sure.
story? And then I went to play a Link to the Past. And unfortunately, I also played Zelda 2. I'll get into that one. But my good for the Legend of Zelda, get this, it's Majora's Mask.
The listeners
me
can't
out.
see this. I'm not looking at the webcam right now. For the listeners at home, I'm gonna go ahead, Sandy.
I am offended that you don't see. This is why it's so good for me. I was like, you know what? I can go Breath of the Wild. I can go Ocarina of Time. I could go A Link to the Past. But no, I'm gonna go Majora's Mask. Damn it! That game to me, man, the emotional attachment that I have to that game. Not only that, gameplay solid. Hello, it's the same, pretty much the same kind of visuals and graphics and gameplay that you saw with Ocarina of Time. It was still for the Nintendo 64. It was a direct sequel. Let's not get into the whole timeline talk. I'll have to pull
Yeah,
up my actual Historia books and everything.
I think for the purpose of this discussion, the Legend of Zelda timeline is not being discussed. There are
No,
people that
not
will
this time.
claim they know everything about that, and I'm sure you do, and that's great for you. But you know what? We're just going to talk about the games.
Agreed. But no, Majora's Mask, man. Josh, I gotta ask you, did
Yeah.
you did you ever watch this YouTube video called Game Theory? And it goes into a theory that maybe Link is actually dead in Majora's Mask. Have you ever seen that video by any chance?
I haven't seen that video, but I have seen that theory. I've seen that one floated around.
All right. So I'm a huge dork when it comes to video game theories, especially for The Legend of Zelda. This is not even a made up story. One day I woke up and I watched that video because I watch it at least once a year. I don't know why. It makes me cry. I'll get into that a little bit later. But then I go into like YouTube, then suggest other videos that are kind of like it, and then I go into this wormhole of just like video game theories and what's next in Breath of the Wild 2, and did you think about what this means and what that means? And I'm just like, oh, there's so much to digest with Legend of Zelda. So that video, I mention it because to me, it makes perfect sense when it comes to digesting and breaking down Majora's Mask. Majora's Mask, to me, it's a more mature Ocarina of Time, if that kind of makes any sense.
Sure.
It's more, the storyline there is just so deep, and it goes over so many different levels. And not only in the emotional aspect and the storyline aspect, but it also goes so deep into the gameplay. The whole gameplay with, the three days times having to go back and forth to be able to beat this game and to kind of get everything out of the game. It's tough, and I feel like that's what frustrated a lot of people. Trust me, it took me like 7 times to be able to beat Majora's Mask because of the damn time traveling. I just never really understood it at first, especially when I was little.
Sure,
and even
sure.
as an adult, I was like, man, let me go ahead and Google this because I don't know what the hell to do. But just the like I said, like the graphics were pretty much in par with Ocarina of Time. It's just really the story. It really tugs at your heart. Having the moon, having this apocalypse be upon you the entire time that you're playing, that you're able to look up and see this monstrous moon fall upon you. Not only that, but you're chasing after Skull Kid, who stole this mask, who's making this apocalypse essentially happen. It was the story behind that. I feel like it's just such an underrated game. It's such an underdog. And actually, lately, I've been noticing a lot more people kind of saying, hey, Majora's Mask deserves a second chance. Or, hey, you know what? I prefer Majora's Mask better. So, Josh, I think you need to give it a second playthrough and get back to me with your modified opinion on the game.
Well, we'll get to my opinion in a second. I do want to go back to, you mentioned Link to the Past. I will say, for whatever reason, that was a Zelda title that we didn't have, even though we had the Super Nintendo. I don't know why we didn't have Link to the Past. Your guess is as good as mine. I was not involved in a lot of the decision making to purchase the Super Nintendo games when we were, that was our primary system, because I was, 4, my brother was 8, so he kind of controlled what was going on with that. But Link to the Past is definitely one you should check out. We're going to continue talking about Majora's Mask because I wrote Majora's Mask as my bad, and and I wrestled with whether I wanted to make this the bad or the ugly, and the ugly I have some pretty good reasons for, and we'll get into that. And the ugly also has a little bit of a hope for it, but for me, all those things that you mentioned about Majora's Mask are true, and I don't and doing a good, the bad, the ugly for a Legend of Zelda talk is much more difficult than, say, a good, the bad, and the ugly for the Final Fantasy series, right? There are some stinkers in Final Fantasy. They've released like 30 of them. There's going to be problems, right? You can jump right on into Final Fantasy 11 and talk about how bad the online gameplay was and how broken that game was and how they completely trashed it, right? There's not really that with Zelda, because unless you start talking about the Philips CDI games, and I don't consider those canon, and I don't think Nintendo does either, and I don't think anyone should ever play them or talk about them, because Wand of Gamelon and Zelda's Adventure are barely video games. Not worth exploring at all. Don't even Google them. Don't give them don't ruin your search algorithms looking for those. But I did put Majora's Mask, and I think the same things that you talked about enjoying, with like the stress of the 3-day cycle, this and that, to me, that 3-day cycle becomes really tedious. It becomes a lot of repetition. Oh, I got to make sure that I drop off all my rupees at the banker. Then when you go back in time 3 days, now you got to go get your rupees back from the banker. And you have to go through the same thing over and over and over again. And you lose a lot of your supplies. You lose this, you lose that. I found it to be not as well thought out. It was a great attempt at something different. And for me, this time, the attempt at something different didn't work the way I think that they wanted it to. I still think it's a good video game. I still think it's worth playing. But in a series that is The Legend of Zelda, as vast as that is, and as many titles there are, different sometimes works, with the case like something like the Wind Waker, where they did the cel shaded graphics and then boat travel and different things like that. For me, Majora's Mask, it didn't work. And so if I'm saying something is bad because of the absence of good, there's less good in my opinion. And for the listeners at home, Sandy is staring a hole through my head. I think for me, it's and I see this opinion online both ways. Oh, you're such a hipster that you love Majora's Mask, and then, oh, you're just such a hipster because you hate Majora's Mask. Listen, I don't hate it. I just don't think it's as good as the other ones. If that makes you any less mad at me, Sandy.
Yeah, a little bit, I guess. But I do want to. So you said it was what did you just say? It was not thought out enough or well enough. It wasn't thought out. I think it was too thought out.
I guess that's what. Yeah, I mean, two sides of the same coin, in my opinion, because there's so much stuff. There's so much stuff that I think that if they would have taken the time and then not done the 3-day cycle, having to do that over and over and over again, but instead saying, okay, let me ask you this: if the story is you have 3 days to accomplish everything, and you and the events that you do progress the time versus I have to run across all of this place and get to this spot, go through this dungeon, go through this, go through that, and all of that takes pretty much most stuff takes about 2 days in that cycle, so you don't have a whole lot of time to waste. Instead of that, saying, okay, day one was, the first half of day one was clearing through the forest, or not necessarily day 3 days, but say like the story takes place over a week, and each thing you do progresses that timeline to the point where now at the end of the game, the moon is there, you're ready to fight Skull Kid, and this is your one shot. You don't get to go back in time. To me, that makes it a little bit more of a sense of urgency.
Easier.
Not easier, less tedious. But you know what? But hey, listen, if you like the game, which I know you do, I certainly won't hold that against anyone. It's not the Zelda game for me.
To me, the time travel didn't really impact that gameplay. I think it added more to it because it was so new. It's very innovative and creative the way they kind of, in my opinion, put all that together. And not only that, but you have your missions within each part of Termina. And
Termina,
yep. And also the mask, the story behind the mask, being able to do all those side quests. And man, this game to me, going back to that video game theory, is Link's dead in Majora's Mask. If you haven't seen it, simple Google Majora's Mask game theory. This is one of the first ones that comes up. It released in 2013. It's been a while. It really breaks down. Of course, it's just a theory. It's nothing confirmed by Nintendo or anything, but it really goes into, hey, what if Termina is actually some sort of purgatory? Because when we see in the beginning of the game, Link is out searching for Navi. He loses Epona. There's this big conflict. He falls down this giant hole which cannot be explained, and how all the similarities between everyone in the towns compared to back in Hyrule. It's a really interesting theory that says, hey, what if this is purgatory? What if and also the relation with the mask and everyone that you meet throughout the storyline, how every town they're dealing with a loss, and it kind of goes over how this could all be interpreted as the 5 stages of grief. Every town kind of goes into one of those stages, and it's such a well put out theory that to me is one of my absolute favorite game theories. And I'm, like I said, I'm a huge dork when it comes to these, and they make me cry. Anything that has to do with grief and loss and death really kind of hits home to me. As mentioned earlier, my great aunt playing Legend of Zelda, she's the reason why I'm into video games. She passed away when I was 12 years old, so it was really hard on me. So any kind of video game that goes into that, tugs at your heart when it comes to loss, it really kind of takes me in. And Majora's Mask is just, to me, yes, the gameplay to some like you wasn't as fun because it felt tedious, but I thought it was just absolute genius. And that's why I love Majora's Mask, damn it.
No, hey, listen, like I said, I especially I can understand the emotional connection that The Legend of Zelda has tying you back to your great aunt. And so I'm not talking bad about it. I'm just not talking as good about it. But anyways, all right. Listen, I know this is tough for you, but you got to give me a bad.
I know, I'm trying to keep it positive. But no, the bad for me, I did a little sneak peek earlier when it fell out of my mouth. The Legend of Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link.
Sure.
Did you play this one, Josh?
I tried to play it a lot as a kid, and I failed a lot as a kid, because I felt like the difficulty was just completely ramped up, and it kind of made it unplayable and as a kid.
Oh, awful, so bad. Even as an adult, I think I've downloaded I bought it multiple times on my 3DS and probably my GameCube. Not my GameCube. What's it called?
The Wii, the Wii U, yeah.
Wii U, yeah. So I tried to play it as an adult. I cannot freaking play this game. To me, it looks so ugly. It looks clunky. I know that it had a rush release. I remember reading about this when when I was like, why is this game so different from, like, let's say A Link to the Past or any kind of game in the series. I like different. Different is good. For example, Majora's Mask, but this one to me just, it didn't feel like a Zelda game. It didn't look like a Zelda game. The story behind it, I mean, I don't think I played deep enough to really find out the story because I just couldn't play it. It was just too hard. It kind of reminded me a little bit of I don't know if you ever played Golden Sun.
Sure.
Golden Sun, one of my all-time favorite RPGs, and it to me it just got to the point where it's so tedious just because there was the constant. God, there was something about it that kind of reminded me with Zelda 2 that just I did not enjoy the gameplay. And so this is one of the Zelda games that I was not able to beat and also did not want to beat. I was just like, I am done trying to play this one. And it's just been blackballed in my mind.
It's funny too, because, and I agree with you, this is not a very good game. Like you said, rush release. The original Legend of Zelda comes out in 1986. It's a huge success. They want to put more out in the market. They come back with a different composer. Koji Kondo doesn't do the music for this one. And it's released in 87, in January of 87, whereas The Legend of Zelda was February of 86. So not even a full year of production. And they're rushing out, which is, this big title of theirs. And, we see similarities, I think, a lot of times, when they're trying to, okay, how do we capitalize on this, right? How do we keep pushing this out? And, Super Mario Brothers 2 has that same kind of problem where they really just kind of reskin another game and then they just push it out and then we all buy it because, oh my God, it's Super Mario Brothers 2, right? So while that's a little bit more of a playable game than Zelda 2 is, I think Zelda 2 also, though, gives us, which is one of my favorite things to do in Super Smash Brothers, and that is Link's downward sword kind of pogo stick kind of looking move, which is, of course, the first time and only time, to my knowledge, that we get to do that in a Zelda game is in Zelda 2.
Yep, and I hated it. I'm going to be a negative Nancy when it comes to this game. But did you know, Josh, it was a delayed release. If I remember correctly, it was supposed to release in February 1988. But I think there was some kind of shortage, and it actually released in November of the same year. Oh, no, October of the same year, if I'm not mistaken.
Hey, that's a great note. I didn't know that.
But the more you know.
Listen, I will never claim to be the person that knows all the facts, and anytime someone corrects my facts, believe me, just correct away. Like I mentioned last week on the pod, I'm a married man. Being corrected is what I do.
Oh, shout out to Colleen.
Shout out to Colleen. So listen, this is going to be brief with my ugly. This is, and I'm going to say this as this is not a comment directly about the game. This is a comment directly about the controls of the game. And the only major Zelda title that I haven't finished in a very long time, and that's Skyward Sword. And
I knew it.
And Skyward Sword, I thought, could have been a game that really defined the Wii. I thought it was going to be something that was absolutely awesome. I was excited for it, and then, my God, the Wii motion controls it was unplayable. Listen, like I've said before, I fancy myself as pretty good at video games, and I just got frustrated. It's not that I couldn't do it; it's that I didn't want to. There was no reason for me to keep on trying to do this thing where I'm holding the Wiimote sideways. It's not reacting the way it's supposed to. And then even with before everyone shouts, but what about the Wii Motion Plus? Didn't work. That didn't matter. It still sucks. So, like we said, we're trying to keep positive on this podcast, but we're doing the good, the bad, and the ugly. And listen, Skyward Sword, I hope I get to play it without motion controls. There was a leak on Amazon UK for a listing of a Switch port for Skyward Sword. If that happens, I will get that port as long as I don't have to do anything with a Wiimote ever again. And that might be a topic for another time. But Skyward Sword is my ugly, and like I said, I keep it brief because graphically it was fine, but those controls were hideous.
You know what's so funny, Josh? So my ugly is also Skyward Sword.
No way.
Yeah. And I think the reason for that, why we both chose it, is because it was supposed to be this defining moment in the Legend of Zelda franchise.
Yeah.
And it overpromised but under-delivered. Now, to me, the motion controllers weren't even that big of a deal. I did fine, especially with the motion what's it called? Motion sensor
Yeah.
control plus, whatever the heck it is.
Yeah, the Wii Motion Plus, yeah.
Yep, I had no problems at all when it came to that. To me, what really makes it the ugly, and that's why I didn't put in the bad, because to me, the storyline here, I mean, it really just kind of put all the other storylines into perspective, and it kind of tied them up, especially being, since Skyward Sword is supposed to be the very first one, like this is the beginning,
Sure.
the beginning of all the beginnings. So to me, the storyline checks out, beautiful. The music, oh my goodness. I mean, I played the Ballad of the Goddess on my way to work almost every day just to get me hyped, and it gives me goosebumps. So the music there is good. Like I said, I didn't mind the motion controllers. To me, the biggest issue and why it was such a disappointment was just there was so much repetition, and not in a good way. Not in a good way how Majora's Mask kind of made it seem. To me, Majora's Mask was able to do the repetition, but with every repetition, there was purpose to it. There was
Sure.
a meaning behind it, and there was a reward. There was a prize for doing that. Every time you kept advancing. To me, Skyward Sword, and I tried playing this game multiple times to see maybe I was being too tough on it before, and every time it's the same thing. I get so fed up with having to go do these fetch quests only to not be rewarded, to say, hey, just kidding, we don't have the answer or what you were looking for or what we told you were going to find. You have to do this now. And it just put you all over the place. You had to go back to the same 3 areas multiple times, and that part, what to me wasn't so bad. It was also the fact that the game did not allow me to personally discover the quests or the things that I needed to find in order to progress the storyline. There was a lot of hand holding in this game with Fee. I personally liked Fee, but man, she was in there even more so than Navi, and there was so much hand holding. The game was very linear in the sense like, hey, to progress, you have to do this, and then you have to do this. But then you couldn't find it for yourself. They pretty much guided you, walked you by the hand the entire way through. And one of the main reasons why I love Zelda is being able to have the chance to personally discover what the game is about, what the story is about, what you need to do to progress. The water temple, heck, we talked about that earlier. There was no hand holding there whatsoever.
No.
And that is why it's such that temple is so memorable to most of us fans of Legend of Zelda, because it was so hard, but at the same time so rewarding once you were able to figure out and complete it. I did not feel rewarded at all when it came to Skyward Sword, just because I knew it was, hey, this is just the way the cookie crumbles. This is just where I need to go. This is where the game is pushing me. And that to me was just, it took me away from the game. And I wish it didn't, because to me, that game, I couldn't tell you how excited I was about it. I bought the special edition. To me, it was supposed to be that defining moment in the series. Kind of like how Breath of the Wild kind of did. To me, Breath of the Wild was actually a big defining moment in the franchise. And that to me is what Skyward Sword was supposed to be as well, but it did not deliver, unfortunately.
Well, remembering too that Skyward Sword was the follow-up to a pretty damn good game in the Twilight Princess. And I think for me, the reason why obviously Twilight Princess was originally designed to be played on the GameCube, so it keeps that traditional gameplay style, just traditional controls. You don't have any of that, real motion stuff. I played Twilight Princess on the GameCube. I opted to stick to the old stuff. And then when Skyward Sword was like, this is the first one truly designed for the Wii. We're turning a corner here. This is Nintendo's new thing. They're pushing their chips all in with this motion stuff. And then, like you said, it definitely fell short. But that's enough time talking about the ugly. It's enough time talking about the bad. If you had to tell someone that's listening to this podcast right now, choose one Legend of Zelda game to go put it into your whatever system it is and go play it, which one is it, Sandy?
Oh my gosh, putting me on the spot.
I am.
Outside of the good that we talked, my honorable mention for the good, for one that you should play, for one that maybe didn't get enough love when it came out, the Wind Waker.
Excellent choice. Excellent choice.
I love that game. It's so beautiful, so much fun. The storyline, just superb. I could do the little boat on the ocean all day long and hunt for treasure. I know some people were like,
yeah.
"Oh God, the ocean's so large," but no, it's so much fun.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, for me, the Wind Waker was one that at first I was like, I don't really know about this, right? I did sailing on a boat the whole time. What is this? And then when you start to kind of get into it, right, and you're like, holy shit, like, I'm riding a boat around, right? And I can do this and I can do that. And it has the exact opposite problem that you talked about with Skyward Sword, where they're pushing you to do this, do this, do this, do this. And Wind Waker, you could do anything you wanted. It was completely non-linear. You could find the treasure. You could find the different places to go. Yeah, no, I absolutely, I agree with that 100%.
Yes.
And it is, in my opinion, the best of the GameCube Zelda games, which I guess you could technically say there was three. We won't talk about Four Swords Adventures because that was you want to talk about gimmicks, requiring there to be requiring there to be four players. I didn't have three other friends that wanted to play with me ever, so I never got Four Swords.
Same here. I'm an only child, and I was like such a homebody, and I'm very introverted. So to me, playing with others was like, oh, deal breaker. Nope, I don't want it.
Well, I'm one of five, and I couldn't find three other people to play with yet, and to play with me, and I think that says more about the game than it does about how much my siblings like me, and at least it's what I'm going to go to bed thinking tonight. But my go play, I kind of toss around with this a lot because there's, like we've mentioned, there's so many good ones. You should play all of them, with the exception of maybe Zelda 2 and the CDI games. There's a lot of handheld ones that I didn't get around to playing, but my sister played them, who's a huge Zelda fan. She loves those Spirit Tracks and the seasons and ages and stuff like that. I didn't. I was at a point in my life where handheld games I wasn't playing. I know I need to go back and play them. But for me, and you've mentioned it, Breath of the Wild is, for me, if you want to play an open world game that allows you to do everything you do is up to you. And the fact of the matter is that you can go and fight Ganon right off the jump. If you're really good, you might be able to beat him. I've seen people do it, but most of us would just with the wooden sword and shield, right? For me, like, and it gave so much more emotion too because of the talking cutscenes with Zelda and different things, and there's so much emotion built into this, and with the Guardians and with the different things that's going on. You can make that game last as long as you need it to. You can make it be a 30-hour game. You can make it be a 70-hour game if you're a completionist. I mean, there's not a more anticipated game, I think, from Nintendo right now than Breath of the Wild 2, which they announced. Which, with a series like Zelda, and it's similar to Final Fantasy in that regards, everyone is an entry in that series, but they're oftentimes not directly related. And we say that with Final Fantasy 13, they actually made that one a trilogy. Final Fantasy 10, there was 10 and then 10-2. But outside of that, everything else kind of its own standalone thing. And with this, we're seeing Nintendo say, okay, Breath of the Wild was awesome. There was great fan response to it. It got probably a lot of people that never played Zelda before interested in that series. And really, there's a lot of people that say, well, it wasn't really a Zelda game because you didn't go to the dungeons and you didn't have the water dungeon and the fire dungeon. But you know what? Listen, that's called evolving. That's called making new things. That's called pointing your franchise in a direction it hasn't gone, because eventually those same things get stale. And I think that's why most video game series don't last that long. They don't have the ability to continue to grow and change and do different things because they're not trying to add new gameplay. They're not trying to change the direction that the game is going. We talked about Twilight Princess. If you would have told me that I would have spent half of my time as Midna, I probably wouldn't have ever picked up the game, because I would have been the first one to say, well, no, I'm playing as Link. That's the Legend of Zelda game. But how awesome was playing as Midna? they just give you a whole different level of puzzles. And I think for Breath of the Wild, it just it's completely different. It's completely off the walls. It's vast. The first like I mean, I would just get to the top of a mountaintop and just look over the scenery and just be like,
So beautiful.
it's one of the most beautiful games I've ever played. And it's on the Nintendo Switch. It's using a little flash cartridge, and we're playing. I'm playing games that are on Blu-ray discs that are supposed to be these massive, awesome, beautiful games, and 99% of them don't touch Breath of the Wild. They just
Hmm.
don't. And so, I'm a little long-winded in my answer, but go play Breath of the Wild. Seriously, if you can
Hell
find us,
yes.
if you don't have a Switch, try your damnedest to find one, and then get Breath of the Wild. You won't be disappointed, and even though it's still a full-price game, it's worth every penny.
Worth it and more. I think I've put over like 150 hours on that game. It's insane. I love it.
Yeah, I mean,
Such a
it's
cry.
one too that you can go back and play it a completely different way. And this, I mean, the difficulty was there. I mean, it was just, I loved it. I've talked enough about it. I'll move on. So with that, last week we did end on one more wrestling match, and we're going to get to that the same way we ended last week's podcast. But in between that, we're also going to say, hey, what kind of a one more video game kind of recommendation is all. So it's a segment that I wrote down in my notes as calling it "What did you play?" And it'll be just that we'll talk about whatever game we decided to play that week. So Sandy, what did you play this week?
So this is a game that I played this week, but I do not recommend. I recently moved to an apartment that has a little loft upstairs, and that loft is now my video game room. I will definitely have to take some photos and share it on Twitter so you guys can check it out and tell me what you think or what I should do differently. But I took all my old consoles, including the NES, and I put in Fester's Quest, and to my surprise, it still worked. Holy crap. So I remember playing this game when I was little, and I knew it kicked my ass then. I probably saw my great aunt play it, and she probably beat it or something. I can't really remember, but I'm like, oh, I remember this being fun. No. It's ridiculous. Like, I want to be able to beat it one day. I feel like that's going to be one of my life's goals, to beat Fester's Quest. But
Absolutely.
man, it's hard. You get like 3 little, I forget, maybe like 4 miserable little lives. And if you advance in the game and you die, you get taken back to the very beginning. Now, this may not sound like a big deal, but in this game it is, because it's so hard to be able to move forward. There's so many enemies everywhere, and it's like an alien infestation pretty much, with these giant spiders who just kick your ass left and right, and then these shitty freaking guns that don't aim straight. Oh my God, I got my ass worked for hours, and I was like, no, I can do it. And no, I could not do it.
Yeah, Fester's Quest is one, and I've mentioned this to you earlier in the week, that the Angry Video Game Nerd has definitely tackled. If you like video games and you like comedy, check out Angry Video Game Nerd. He's been around for a while. Talked about a plethora of old games that are really, really bad. Fester's Quest is one of them. It is, like you mentioned, like the weapons you get in that game, they have a hit radius of like -6. They do not hit. It's barely it's really impossible to hit things. And if you get lucky enough, like you said, to advance, and then you take one hit that you didn't see, because by the way, your hit radius is very large, you do get sent all the way back to the beginning of the game, and it's just devastating. And I don't have that life goal, that video game bucket list that you do, Sandy, of beating Fester's Quest. Mine is to never play Fester's Quest ever again. So so far I'm doing pretty good at that.
Well, good luck to you. I'm going to try to make you play it again, actually, so I'm going to
Oh
ruin that.
no. All right. Well, we'll update you guys, on later episodes if that actually happens. Maybe we'll keep a ticker of consecutive weeks that Josh has not played Fester's Quest. But I probably won't keep track of that. I'll just say it won't happen again.
So Josh, what did you play this week?
I played the Ghost of Tsushima on the PlayStation 4, and it was one of those things where I didn't necessarily want to play another AAA title. I just got done playing Final Fantasy VII Remake. I just got done playing Last of Us Part 2. I was like, man, I don't want to drop another $60 and play another AAA game right now. And then I was like, wait, there's like GameStop was getting pretty desperate for trade-ins, and I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to replay these other ones. So I wound up getting Ghost of Tsushima basically for free because I traded in. So, not free. It cost me something, but I didn't shell out any cash. I was excited about it. I wanted to play it. It got pushed back, but it did come out in July, and I'm a few hours into it. I haven't really gotten to the point where I'm playing it regularly. When I play violent video games, Sandy, as you talked to my kids earlier, they are 4 and 3, and this game is rated mature, and there is a
Ooh.
lot of blood because you are a samurai. Um, you, it's got this kind of Western feel to it, while being it
A la
feels kind of
Red Dead Redemption.
yeah, it kind of feels Red Dead-ish.
Mm.
But I will say this, and I'll just make a brief comment on Red Dead Redemption because I didn't play it this week. But the first Red Dead Redemption I enjoyed a lot more than the second one. I felt like the second
Mm.
one it took way too long to do anything or get from point A to point B. But that's maybe a topic for another time. But Ghost of Tsushima, everything seems not too far. Even if you have to go and do something on the other part of the map, it doesn't take that long for you to ride your horse over there. There's a lot of roads, and then they encourage in some places to not stick to the roads because basically the story of the game is that the Mongolians have invaded the island of Tsushima as a means to continue to take over the rest of Japan. And so this is set in feudal times. You are a samurai. You got your katana. You got your armor, and basically you have two options presented to you in the game, and one of them is to be the traditional samurai, never breaking your code, which is to fight fight man to man, always lock eyes with your enemy, never do anything disgraceful. It's just pure swordsmanship. And then he gets faced with this kind of this moral challenge in that his uncle who trained him is constantly in his head because he's now being taught by someone that being sneaky is okay because it's the only
Mm.
way to save the island of Tsushima because they're outnumbered. He's basically the only samurai left at this point, based off of the intro of the game. I don't think I'm spoiling anything there. But basically, your character is the last samurai, not Tom Cruise. Um, Shout out to whitewashing Hollywood movies. Um, but you are faced with this conundrum, and every chance that you get, every time you walk up on or ride your horse upon a group of Mongols, or you see a settlement that they've taken over, you have the option to initiate a standoff where you push up on the D-pad and he calls out the enemy, and you go one-on-one with someone with your hand on your sword, and they like go to attack you, and you have to release the button at the right time and you slice them.
Ooh.
And then some of them like pretend to attack to make you swing, and then when you swing before they attack, then they get you and like take 90% of your health. Like it's a pretty cool mechanic, and that's why it feels kind of Western duelish, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you meet Spurs at high noon, right? So it does kind of feel like that whole Western presentation with a feudal skin on it, so to speak. The gameplay is really clean. Everything's really smooth. It is a little buggy here and there. Um, like jumping. There's times that my character will jump up to a ledge, and instead of like grabbing onto the ledge and pulling himself up, the game kind of glitches him up, and he just kind of lands on his feet on a on a ledge that's like 7 feet high.
No
So
way.
I'm just like, I'm gonna ignore that, right? Because I'm having fun playing the game. So
Mm.
in a lesser game, that'd be like, oh my god, I can't believe it's this buggy. But it's really minor things, and you get like different weapons, like a bow and arrow, and like different powder bombs and different things like that. So it's definitely worth playing. It's worth checking out. Like I said, I'm under 10 hours in it, and I can't wait to play more. But I gotta that's my late night gaming Phil, because we're trying to keep the children away from violence and blood and such as much as we can. Um,
That makes sense. I
I,
did
and I,
want to mention, so you mentioned like that the main character had a moral dilemma almost, to where he could act honorably or act deceitfully, I guess, because
Yeah.
he's taught both ways. That reminded me of Fable. Did you ever play Fable?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Fable was a huge game for me growing up. I love that game
Love it.
series. And I'll be honest with you, I was not interested in buying an Xbox Series X until they made the Fable announcement that it was coming. So, um,
Nice.
but yeah, no,
Oh, you're a
definitely that.
Sony guy.
Well, I don't know. I wouldn't say that I'm a Sony guy per se. I never owned a PS2 until I married and inherited one. Um, we were a Nintendo family through and through. So, NES, SNES, Super Nintendo, excuse me, Nintendo 64, GameCube. I would get into big arguments with the neighborhood kids about why the GameCube was better than their, crappy PlayStation 2. Um, or regular Xbox. I never had the original Xbox. And then I did have a 360 for a time. I had a PS3, I had a PS4 Pro, had a PS4 before that, and I traded up to get the PS4 Pro because I wanted, 4K. Um, but yeah, I got to a point where I just kind of followed the games that I wanted to play, and Sony has the better first party titles. And then I have a Switch, obviously.
I was going to say,
I Switch it.
Nintendo has the best first party titles. Get out of here.
Well, okay. So, but I should say exclusives would probably be the better word to use. First party titles, absolutely. I mean, Mario, Zelda, Metroid. I'm a big Star Fox guy, going back to the Super Nintendo guy, thing. But the big exclusives that Sony's really been rocking, with Spider-Man was an awesome game. Last of Us 1 and 2 was awesome. The Uncharted games, obviously. Final Fantasy 7
God of
Remake was a
War.
place that God of War is a great example. Final Fantasy 7 Remake, I believe, was a exclusive for a year. And then it wasn't exclusive, but like Horizon Zero Dawn, I thought was a really fantastic game. But there's a little bit of a rabbit hole, but I'll talk about video games and rabbit holes until I stop myself or someone stops me. And since we are now approaching that hour that we don't want to get to ever when we're recording, so I'm going to throw it over to you, Sandy. For back to put a bow on our wrestling video game podcast here. What's one more match that our listeners should go and check out?
So, everybody listening to our show, thank you so much for spending the time with us today. I want to, for this segment of One More Match, I actually want to give you one more series, one more promotion of wrestling to watch, and they're called Punk Pro Wrestling. Their shows are available on YouTube if you just search Punk Pro Wrestling. They have a series, the most recent one that came out, called The Secret Show. They have 11 episodes, and they're featuring great talent from Florida, including my fellow classmates and friends from the Lethal Academy here in Tampa Bay, including Hunter Law, Troy Hollywood, Avery Taylor, Catalina Perez, Weezy T, Logan Cruz, Daniel Starling, Aaron Nova, and Ron Bass Jr. So if you guys have some time, definitely check them out. Give them some views on YouTube. Give some feedback. These are great up-and-coming talents, of course. Hunter Law and Troy Hollywood, they've been around the scene for a little while, and they're just absolutely killing it in the independent scene. Same with Avery Taylor. You've seen her on FIP, Shine, and most recently Evolve, if I'm not mistaken. And everyone else, they're absolute great talents. Definitely check out their shows. Lots of fun, lots of great action. Free to watch online on YouTube, Punk Pro Wrestling.
Yeah, and we'll actually make sure to link the channel for that in the show notes on your favorite podcast app, whatever you're listening to us on.
What about you, Josh?
My one more match, and this is something like we talked about last week about wanting to do a little bit more digging into the archives here of Impact, as an Impact podcast, and as someone who has not been watching Impact, I found this match on the list that Fight TV has a list of the top 10 matches of the decade. And the number 10 match, which is the favorite one I've watched a couple of these off this list so far, because I'm, like I've mentioned many, many times, I'm a fan of Lucha, and I love tag team wrestling. And so is the Lucha Bros versus LAX Full Metal Mayhem from Rebellion 2019. If you haven't seen this one, it is incredibly violent. It is high spot after high spot all four guys giving absolutely everything. There is thumbtacks in it, which is, as you know, not my favorite thing in the world.
Same
but
here.
the thumbtacks are involved in the finish, so it's okay. I don't have to see them too much. But it's a tag team championship match. It's really good. All four of those guys now we get to watch on free TV every week, which is insane. That we get to see them on TNT. But they had some great matches back in the day too. You can check them out. They have matches on AAA. They have matches in Impact. Really good stuff here. And the finishing bump is absolutely brutal. And I won't spoil it if you haven't seen the match. But I'll go ahead and try to find a way to link that as well in the show notes. It is really, really good. So with that, we're gonna close the book here on episode 2. And thank you again, everyone, for listening. Thank you to the Social Suplex Podcast Network for hosting us. Thank you to Rich Latta for making our theme music. I forgot to mention that last week because I'm a terrible friend.
Rich Latta, check him out. He is so dope. He is a musician. He is an artist. Check him out on YouTube. Maybe you can put his credentials there. He is awesome.
Absolutely.
He makes music. I could pick his mind about wrestling, about music for hours. I haven't done that yet. Maybe one day I'll be able to buy him a coffee and go through that, but he's so talented.
Absolutely. And Rich, of course, you can hear every week on One Nation Radio with his co-host, James Boyd. You can also check out Keeping It Strong Style, the Ricky and Clive Show, and, of course, All Things Elite, and a couple other shows on the podcast network. Please make sure you go and check them out as well. One last reminder to go to manscaped.com, use the promo code SUPLEX to save 20% and get free shipping. And the first 5 people to do so and send us a proof of purchase to the socialsuplex@gmail.com get to watch the All Out pay-per-view for free. And maybe in the future we might look at doing an Impact giveaway as well. If you're a fan of Impact like we are. I haven't figured out who's paying for that yet, so I'm not going to say that we're going to do that, Sandy, but we'll talk about that later. But without further ado, we'll let you get on your way and enjoy your other podcast. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everybody. Bye.
Bye.